It's time for Maggie and the Moms, sponsored by Tampa General Hospital. Welcome to Maggie and the Moms, where we celebrate but never sugarcoat parenting. Creating a family through adoption is our focus today. Our panel is ready to share their experiences and expertise. My co-host Farron Hipp is an adoptive mom to a 2.5-year-old daughter named Ezra. Stephanie Rodriguez-Nee currently has 7 children, 2 adopted, 2 that she's fostering, and 3 biological children.
Well, 2 biological, 1 step. We're very blended.
Blended
Yours,
family.
Mine, ours, and everyone's.
Yes, she founded the Tampa Bay Moms Group. And Nicole Witt, she is a mother to 2 grown children, and she founded the Adoption Consultancy to help parents navigate this process. Thank you all for being here. Yes, perfect panel to discuss this topic. I'd like to start, Farron and Stephanie, by just hearing about your adoption journey.
Yeah, mine was a random circumstance that I found out my wife had a distant relative that was pregnant, and she happened to be looking for a same-sex couple that she wanted to give the child to. Well, hello, here we are. You know, we would like one, and we still had to go through the legal process, and it was across a different state, so it was an ordeal.
Yeah.
But now we are happy to have our baby girl with us.
Happy family of 3. And you, Stephanie? Happy family of much bigger
Yeah, mine's a little different. We weren't looking to adopt. I actually am a family preservation advocate, which means I really try to help biological families find other options to stay together, whether that's support and resources, and help them with reunification if they are separated, which is why I became a foster parent. But as we know, not all children can be reunified, so my 2 youngest are adopted through the foster care system.
And they have a wonderful mom at home.
The blessings of my life, they really are.
Nicole, you help so many families navigate this process. What do you find is the thing that they need the most help with, that they struggle with the most?
I think starting in the process itself, but continuing into the parenting, is the relationship with the birth mom or the birth family, because that's so new. It's so different than any relationship they've probably ever had. It's scary in the beginning. So I think, and it ebbs and flows and changes like every other relationship in your life. So I think really kind of learning about what to expect there and what's appropriate and how to manage that positively all the way through, because that's so critical for the child.
And that's the kind of thing that you help them navigate, so that it's a little less scary, because it's exciting, but I imagine it's just so many questions.
Yes.
We're going to tackle some of them, some topics on the wheel that we'll talk about specifically related to adoption. And the first one is telling the kids. That's a question. When, if, for some families, will you keep a relationship with the birth parents?
So having 2 moms, I think it's pretty obvious that, something happened here. And, we knew that we'd have to tell her pretty soon on and explain the situation, that she's adopted, how it happened, but even sooner than we expected, because we were at church the other day and a little girl asked, "Wait, you're her mommy?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I am." And she said, "Well, she doesn't look like you." And that aspect of it, there are other kids around that even though my child doesn't understand that I have 2 mommies and maybe that's a little different, other kids around her will say things to her. I explained to her, well, do you know what adoption is? Well, God blesses us that there was someone that carried her and, was a big belly, but then I prayed so hard and then he said, here, you can raise her. So now I get to be her mommy.
Wow.
And that's the way that I want to explain it to my daughter as well. We have books, children's books at home that already introduce the word adoption. And so I just want it to be something that she kind of knows already growing up, and then we have conversations as she matures.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, we got my boys when they were essentially straight from the NICU. So they've grown up in a home where we foster. We see kids come in. We see kids, make their way back to their family. They know that they came in as fosters. They know that they were adopted. My son is black, so it's kind of obvious as well. But we always, it's especially having biological connections and talking to their biological family. They know I'm the mommy that keeps them in their house. I'm not the mommy that had them in the tummy.
Do they know the mommy that had them in their tummy, or do they not?
They have connections with biological family. Unfortunately, one of them, the mom is unable to keep contact at this time. and the other one similar circumstances. But my son that has a grandpa and 3 sisters and a great grandma and cousins, he has his life just completely enriched by this a bonus family, which, you know, depending on what home he's in, we might be the bonus family on any day of the week. But it's never been, adoption's not a bad word. It's just something that's part of our life. And the questions get harder. It went from, you know, why don't I look like you, to, well, why did I come into your house? Why did I get here? And that gets harder. But we just have to keep it open, honest, and age appropriate at all times.
When you have families that you advise, is it a common question? When do I tell them? When do I tell them? And maybe some of them are scared that the birth mother may try to take them back.
Right. Well, and all the research shows that it is so important to tell them, and right from the beginning, like you were saying, before they know, they shouldn't have a memory of being told, because then that also becomes a memory of when they realized they couldn't trust their adoptive parents.
Oh, right. I'm so glad you said that, because so many people don't acknowledge that.
It's not a moment, it's a continuing
because it adds to the
conversation.
trauma of the experience, and I love that you recognize that and tell them to handle it differently.
It should just always be part of their stories.
And
like you said, there are babies books that help people figure out the right words. I think the most important part of telling them, though, is talking to them about how when the birth mom was making an adoption plan, that she wasn't in a position to parent any baby, right? Because otherwise kids can grow up with these thoughts of, you know, was I bad? Did I do something wrong? You know, these misguided fears. So I think it's really important that they understand this was not about them as an individual. Right. This was what the birth mom had to make that decision at that point in her life under those circumstances.
And what about the concern or the thought about, you know, in the future, the birth mom kind of coming back into the picture, and maybe that's a scary thought for adoptive parents.
I mean, if it's done legally and properly, and with reputable organizations, elements, legally that's not something that can
If you have
happen.
an open adoption and you keep that as part of your family, you don't have that fear, because it's less scary. You know them. I mean, I've got friends that have adopted children that the biological parents will take them for the weekend and visit, just like going to another family member's house.
And with an open adoption, you still have to have that layer of trust, because through all of our legal documents, there are certain amounts of communication that we can have with the birth mom, but we have to tread lightly, because sometimes it's an emotional issue.
And it's hard on her. Can you imagine the circumstances that bring you to that? And again, it goes back to a lot of times parents think they don't have the support or resources, and that's why they make that decision, which is why one of the things I like to do is try to let a parent know, like, you have options. If that's the option you choose, that's okay.
Right.
But you have options, and that way they are secure in the knowledge that they did what was best for them under their circumstances, and they don't really feel the need to come back and try to get a child, because they did what they felt they needed to do at the time.
Right. Well, unfortunately, this one went so fast. We are out of time. But don't worry, the conversation continues on the Maggie and the Moms podcast. The topic is adoption. Listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or watch on YouTube and WFLAnow.com. Much more there. Daytime, we'll be right back.